Hi, my name is Oyewale, and today I'm going to be talking about counterpressing, answering a few questions around it based on my own opinion and my knowledge about the game of football. So the first thing is counterpressing. What is counterpressing? Counterpressing is how a football team tries to strategically win the ball back from the opponent in the shortest time possible. I'm sure you'll probably be asking, but that's normal in a football game. You try to win the ball back from your opponent. Yes, that's true, and it's something that has been part of the game since the beginning of the game. But the significant difference when it comes to counterpressing is you're not waiting for the opponent to bring the game to your own half. So which means this is not what you do when you are trying to defend your goal. No. This is what you do by going to the opponent's half and trying to win the ball back in your opponent's half. So which means I'm not waiting for you to take the game to my goal mouth. I'm bringing it to your goal mouth. So that's primarily the difference between counter-pressing and just any other pressing or just winning the ball back from your opponents. Then the question is, why do we need to do this? In game of football, what you want to achieve is you want to exert your superiority over your opponent. And one of the ways you can do this is by scoring goals. The second way you can do this is by winning possession, dominating possession. And counterpressing can be very important. So for instance, if you counterpress your opponent, if you go to their half, one of the things you want to achieve is to disrupt their play. You don't want them to build up anything. You want to win the ball back from them as fast as possible. That's the first objective of counterpressing. The second reason why we counterpress is to score goals. To score goals in the football game, you need to move closer to your opposition half, to your opposition goal post. The more you're closer to your opposition goal post, the higher your chance of scoring goals. And that's the second thing you get with counterpressing, because you are making sure that the ball stays within your opposition half, both in the first and second quarter. You keep the ball there, you win the ball there, you increase your chance of scoring goals. And these are the two things I've seen with teams that try to counterpress their opponents. Then the next question is, how can you even implement this? How can you achieve this during a game? Now, what I've seen with few games I've watched so far is different approaches from different coaches. We have mixed approaches sometimes, but the first one I'm going to mention is individual duel. So let's assume this goalkeeper, your opposition goalkeeper, has the ball and is trying to initiate build-up. But in the first approach of counter-pressing, I'll position my players for individual duels, which means one-on-one. And with this, I'm limiting the choice for this goalkeeper to start any build-up process, which means, to a larger extent, going over the top. And going over the top is increasing my team's chance of winning the possession back, which is one of the objectives, and reducing the chance of this team keeping possession. Now, that's the first approach. The second approach is not individual duels, but blocking space and interception. So what that means literally is I'm not going to do one-on-one with the defenders of the opposition team, but I'm going to concede the first phase of their build-up, which is this goalkeeper can pass the ball to any of these defenders. I'm fine with that. But what I'm not going to concede starts from the second phase of the game, which is after passing the ball to this defender, I'm going to block the chance of this defender passing forward and also passing backward. So you see a situation whereby this attacker moves to block this space, this guy moves to block this space, and every of your players make forward commitment. And with that, we've seen teams do this consistently, and it also works out fine. And we've seen teams also try to combine these two approaches depending on how the game evolved, and some other factors. And that leads me to my next question, which is, what are these factors you need to consider before you pick a counter-pressing approach or strategy for your team? The first thing is you need to know your players. You need to know what their abilities are, what they are interested in doing, what they can actually do, how disciplined they are. You need to first understand those things first before you can pick approach. And just to show you an example, to describe why this is very important, is because if you have like a primary attacker that has all of these pressing attributes, it makes sense for you not to consider the first press. So you just go toe to toe because you have primary attackers that can actually do this. But if you don't, but you have most of your pressing strength in your middle, then it's not a bad thing to consider the first press and just allow the goalkeeper to move the ball, to pass the ball to any of these defenders, and then you activate your middle pressing agent to actually carry out, to execute the pressing for you. And with that, you still achieve your first purpose, which is winning the ball back in this half, and the second purpose, which is like creating chance. So that's the first thing you need to consider. Your own profile. What can they do? What are they interested in doing? The second thing to consider is that of your opposition. You need to look at the opposition players. What are their strengths? Can they run? Can they play ball? Are they press resistant? Are they front-footed? Are they tactical discipline? Those are the things you need to consider from your opposition players. And that's why for elite teams, the role of an opposition analyst is a very important one. And that's the second approach, the second factor you need to consider when you are implementing your own counter-pressing strategy. The third thing to consider is, after even winning the ball back, after counter-pressing, what is your next line of action? What is the next thing? We've seen teams, after winning possession back, successfully going for safety first, which is recycling the possession. After running around to win the ball as fast as possible, the next thing they do is keeping it. Recycling, starting their own build-up phase all over again. And we've also seen teams that immediately they win the ball back, the first thing they go for is what? Go. They don't even try to keep possession. Afterward, they just go in straight and try to create a goal scoring chance for them. And we've seen teams try to like combine these two things together during the game. And that's the beauty of counter-pressing. You don't need to stick to one strategy. It depends on how much of work you can put into your implementation and the type of players you have, as well as what you want to get out of the game. Because at the end of the day, if you're not interested in keeping possession, if you're not interested in scoring goals, there is literally no point for your team to counter-press. And that leads me to my last question. Disadvantages of counter-pressing. The first and most obvious one is it's exhausting. Physically, mentally, tactically, it's exhausting, right? And you can see it from games. You've seen teams try to counter-press, but at 50 minutes, 60 minutes, they are done. They are already exhausted. And at the end of the day, what's the whole point? If you've been counter-pressing for the first 60 minutes and you've not been able to score a goal, you are not even creating goal-scoring chances, it's hard. It's hard to implement, and it's also hard to execute. And that's why you see coaches nowadays try to drill their players as much as possible, but that doesn't remove the fact that it's exhausting. The second part is not really so peculiar to counter-pressing, but for any tactical implementation, the vulnerability of counter-pressing. Because you are committing a lot of players to opposition half, you also need to consider the fact that what happens if the opposition beats my press consistently. And that was why I mentioned that the second thing you need to consider in your implementation approach is the opposition players. What's the profile? What is their profile like? If the opposition keeps beating your press consistently, there's a chance that you are going to concede a lot of goals in that game, and you might end up losing the game. And that's why most for games where we've seen this happen over the years, you see the coaches after the games saying something around, oh, we are not compact enough, we need to work on that, we lose our compactness. That's the point they are trying to make. Like, hey, for whatever reason, maybe because the opposition have special players, maybe because they have better strategy, or they are well drilled in terms of their own implementation, they were beating your press consistently. It's gonna be an horrible game, both for the players, the fans, as well as the coaches. If your press is not that compact enough, you might end up considering so many goals. You might end up considering what most football fans consider, what are they doing? So, and that's one of the disadvantages, or what I'm saying, the vulnerabilities of counterpressing. Yeah, I hope you enjoy it. That's my own opinion and how I watch the game nowadays. I hope you also do the same and enjoy doing the same. Thanks, and keep watching football, keep supporting football, and keep enjoying football. Until next time, bye.